Much. Well, as I said, our panel is staying with us throughout the course of the programme. Usama Hassan is still here, Miriam Francois Serra and Tariq Ramadan. And joining us also is the academic and author Dr. Aliyu Musa, who is specialising in Nigerian jihadist groups like Boko Haram. Thank you so much for joining us, Aliyu Musa. Tell me, we were looking there at Boko Haram. Why have we seen a jump in the number of attacks?
Well, basically, there are three factors that have been responsible for that. One, the first of those factors is the fact that the Nigerian government has not done much to curtail the activities of Boko Haram, and that has emboldened them. If you remember, some years ago, they were not as active as they are today. They went on the ground after they were suppressed in 2009. They regrouped in northern Cameroon. After regrouping, they re-energized and then got more arms. It was from that they were able to fight back and are doing what they are doing today. Okay, that factor has also contributed to the next factor I'll be talking about, the source of funding. They have got more sources of funding, and this is really, really helping their campaign of violence in northern Nigeria today.
And do we know where that has come from? Because there is a suggestion that there is now some sort of crossover, some sort of talking between IS and Boko Haram.
Absolutely.
How much evidence is there for that?
Well, at the minute, there isn't much evidence, but it is clear from their activities, from the way things are escalating, that there is some sort of contact, there is some sort of talk going on between ISIS and Boko Haram, and it's been ongoing for a long time. But before then, of course, there has been link between Boko Haram and Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, and of course, they get a lot of funding from them. Of course, nobody can say exactly how much they get from them. But one other thing that has been very, very helpful to their source of funding is kidnap for ransom, and many countries have been helping them by paying this ransom. We know some Western countries have paid a lot of money to them, and this is really, really helping this campaign of violence.
And in the jihadist sense, I mean, how much of a difference, how much similarity is there between those two groups, IS and Boko Haram?
There are lots of differences and then a few similarities. Differences in the sense that we're talking about Boko Haram that has got kind of local roots, is a product of kind of discontent within Nigeria. I mean, where Boko Haram started, it's a place that is very, very deprived. I've argued a number of times that Boko Haram did not just emerge from the blue. It is an offshoot of previous group that existed in the 1980s, known as Metasine Group. And because that problem was not treated properly, so it went on the ground. Today, it's kind of amplified to this extent. So in that case, there isn't much link between ISIS and Boko Haram.
We're talking earlier about people being drawn in. It's not just men. We are seeing women go and join IS. Certainly with Boko Haram, we're seeing a number of suicide attacks from women, even the suggestion that some of those schoolgirls who were abducted being used and forced into some of these attacks. In terms of that sort of progression of it, why are we seeing that? What is drawing them in?
I mean, I think it's probably quite problematic to assume that there would be gender-based differences in the motivations. I mean, the attraction of these groups is a sense of idealism, as we heard from Osama, a sense of joining this utopian state. And I think gender differences along those lines aren't necessarily in terms of the motivation, but in the manifestation of that. So women, just as men, could be motivated by the idea of joining an idealized state or group, but the manifestation of that is these very fundamentalist groups who have a very puritanical view of gender roles would then have different manifestations of those roles. So while the men might go and fight, women would tend to have more domestic roles.
Professor, in terms of people going to join IS, a lot from North Africa. Just explain why.
Why they're coming from North Africa?
Yes.
I think, no, they are not only coming from North Africa. I think they are coming from the region. It's much more than that. It's just not one region. And some now, the connection came afterward. I think that we need to understand the local dynamics. It's just not to confuse everything. What happened in Boko Haram in Nigeria, it's something which has to be understood from there. And then what is happening first in Syria, because it started in the region in Syria with people resisting to Bashar, and then within having infiltration, and then the connection with Iraq. So once again, this dynamic and people coming in. I think that we need to understand here is that when it comes to this understanding of Islam, first we need to understand the background and then the political situation on the ground, because this is where, if we don't do this, we are just, oh, that this is violence and they are killing. No, there are reasons for killing, there are reasons for resisting, and there are reasons, even though we condemn. So condemn is not the whole issue. To condemn and to count the number of people who are killed, it's not enough. It's really to go further than that. And from a religious background and a religious viewpoint, what was said is important. We have to fight against this understanding of jihad and this. And by the way, your definitions on the BBC website is wrong. It has nothing to do with holy war. It's not an Islamic concept, holy war. So we have to come to something which is deeper here when it comes to religion and more sophisticated when it comes to politics.
And in terms of Boko Haram, are they extending, expanding their reach?
Exactly. They have been doing that. And in my book, I've argued that if something is not done, they are not just going to take part of northeast of Nigeria. They will certainly occupy part of West African sub-region, including countries like Cameroon, including countries like Chad, including Niger. At the minute, of course, there is this allegation that the Chadian government is somehow supporting or bankrolling the activities, which I am not sure how far that is true. But the fact is, if nothing is done by governments in that region, they need a kind of joint intelligence gathering. They need a kind of combination of forces to counter that force that Boko Haram is today. If something is not done and they get enough connection from ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb, then it could be kind of blown out of proportion.
Usama, in terms of the basic data that we've had today, I mean, 60% of the jihadist deaths are carried out by groups with no formal link with Al-Qaeda. So we're seeing a proliferation, aren't we, of groups?
Yeah, certainly. But they all have very similar ideology in terms of using religion, ideas of jihad to fight local political wars. Once Al-Qaeda let that genie out of the bottle, if you like, it has spread everywhere. And it should be emphasized that this is often a Muslim battle. Most of the victims are Muslims. Boko Haram attack loads of mosques. I've known people who've survived attacks on mosques, including Kano, the most symbolic mosque in Nigeria recently. And people are fighting back. So, for example, governments and militaries of, say, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Nigeria, where half the military is Muslim, they see their struggle against these groups as a jihad also, as a sacred war, a sacred struggle for what is right, to resist rebels and terrorists. So it's a lot more complicated than simply these people taking the idea of jihad. I think we should call them takfiris or something else, rebels, heretics, because really Muslims like the word jihad. It's a very noble concept in the Quran. And we won't accept it being hijacked by these people.
All right, just pause for